The ambulance lights flashing against the glass looked exactly like the Christmas bulbs I had just hung when my stepmother slapped me until I tasted blood. I thought the humiliation was the worst part, but I was wrong. The true destruction came from what my golden child brother did next. He did not call 911. Instead, he lifted his phone and committed an act so unthinkable that it handed me the weapon to finally tear their masks off. My name is Lena Carter, and I am 28 years old, though right now, strapped to this stretcher, I feel as small and helpless as a child. The world has dissolved into a rhythmic, nauseating blur of red and blue lights flashing against the ambulance windows. It is almost funny. It is almost a joke. Those lights, pulsing and screaming through the quiet suburban streets of Maple Ridge, look exactly like the expensive, high-end Christmas bulbs I was just hanging in the living room. Red, blue, red, blue. A chaotic, violent strobe light show that mocks the festive spirit I was forced to manufacture. The ambulance hits a pothole, and a fresh spike of agony radiates through my left cheekbone, shooting straight into my eye socket. I gasp, my hands gripping the rough sheets of the gurney. The movement makes me aware of the sticky, gritty sensation on my palms. I look down, squinting through the throbbing swelling of my eye. My hands are covered in glitter, gold and silver dust, mixed with the sticky, fragrant resin of the massive Douglas fir standing in my father's living room. And there is something else there, too. Something darker, wetter, and metallic. Blood. My blood. Mixing with the artificial sparkle of Christmas. It is a grotesque manicure, a perfect summary of my life in the Carter household. Pretty on the outside, bleeding and broken underneath. A paramedic is hovering over me. He looks young, maybe my age, with tired eyes and a name tag that I cannot focus on. He is checking my pupil response with a penlight, the beam stabbing into my headache like an ice pick. "Can you hear me, ma'am?" he asks, his voice calm, practiced, cutting through the siren's wail. "I need you to tell me what happened." I stare at the ceiling of the ambulance. It is metal, industrial, cold, not like the vaulted, crown-molded ceiling of the living room I just left. I can taste copper in my mouth. I must have bitten my tongue when I hit the floor, or maybe the blood is coming from a cut inside my lip. It pools in the back of my throat, thick and warm. "Ma'am?" the paramedic presses, gentler this time, but with an edge of urgency. "Your eye is swelling shut fast, and you have signs of a concussion. We need to know the mechanism of injury. Did you fall?" The script rises in my throat automatically. It is a reflex, honed over nearly 2 decades of living with Greg and Monica Carter. I fell. I was clumsy. It was an accident. I slipped on the ladder while reaching for the top branch. That is what they would want me to say. That is the line that preserves the dignity of the Carter name. That is the lie that keeps the neighbors from whispering and keeps my father's reputation at the real estate firm sterling. I can almost hear my father's voice in my ear, whispering the command, "Don't be dramatic. Lena, don't make a scene." I open my mouth to say it. I open my mouth to say, "I fell." But then, another sensation hits me. It is not the pain. It is the memory of the silence. That terrible silence in the living room after the sound of glass breaking. The silence of 20 well-dressed guests watching me crumble. And the silence of my brother, Noah. I swallow the blood and the lie. "Someone hit you, didn't they?" the paramedic asks, his voice lowering. He has seen this before. He knows the difference between a fall and a fist, or a palm that strikes with the force of a baseball bat. I look at him. I really look at him. For the first time tonight, I am looking into the eyes of someone who sees me as a patient, a victim, a human being. Not a prop, not a servant, not a background character. "My stepmother," I whisper. The words feel jagged coming out, like broken glass. "Excuse me?" He leans in closer. "Monica," I say, my voice gaining a strange, trembling strength. "My stepmother, she beat me, right when I was hanging the star on the tree." Saying it out loud feels like vomiting. It is a violent expulsion of a truth I have swallowed for years. And as soon as the words hang in the sterile air of the ambulance, the flashback hits me. It does not come in a linear story. It comes in sensory fragments, brutal and bright. I am back in the living room. It is warm. It smells of cinnamon candles and expensive pine. The tree is 12 feet tall, a monster of a thing that cost more than my first car. It is perfect. I made sure it was perfect. I spent 4 hours arranging the ribbons, spacing the vintage ornaments, ensuring the lighting was balanced. The guests are there holding crystal glasses of eggnog and spiced wine. They are laughing. They are admiring the scene. I am on the step stool. I am reaching up with the star. The star is heavy, crystal, fragile. Then, the voice, her voice, Monica's voice, sharp enough to cut skin. You are doing it wrong. You are embarrassing us. And then, the motion, a blur of silk and manicured nails. The impact. It was not just a slap, it was a demolition. Her hand connected with the side of my face with a force that sent shockwaves down my spine. I lost my footing. I grabbed at the tree to steady myself. The tree tipped. The ornaments, hundreds of dollars worth of hand-blown glass, rained down. The sound of them shattering against the hardwood floor sounded like gunfire. Pop, pop, crash. I fell into the debris. Shards of glass bit into my arms. The star, that heavy crystal star, dropped right beside my head, cracking in two. I blink, forcing the memory back. I am in the ambulance. The siren is wailing. The paramedic is writing something on a clipboard. His expression has hardened. He is no longer just treating an injury. He is documenting a crime. This is the part where I should be crying. This is the part where I should be asking for my dad. But I am not. I am dry-eyed. I feel cold. A deep, Arctic cold that has nothing to do with the winter night outside. If you are listening to this, if you are reading this, maybe you know this cold. Maybe you are the eldest daughter. Maybe you are the invisible glue holding a family together that would rather discard you than thank you. You know what it is like. You are the practice child, the rough draft. You are the one who learns to be self-sufficient, so the parents can save all their energy and adoration for the second one, the miracle one, the golden child. In my house, that is Noah. Noah is 16 years old. He is 6 feet tall, athletic, handsome in that effortless, pampered way that rich kids are. He is the sun around which the Carter solar system spins. And I am just the gravity that keeps his feet on the ground, invisible and heavy. But here's the thing that is keeping me awake on this stretcher. Here is the thing that hurts more than my swollen eye or my bleeding lip. It is not Monica's slap. I expected that. Monica has hated me since the day she walked into our house with her perfect hair and her fake smile. It is not even my father's reaction. Greg Carter just stood there, his face red with embarrassment. Not concern for me, but concern for his ruined party. No, the thing that is tearing me apart is Noah. When I fell, when I was lying on the floor with glass in my hair and blood dripping onto the Persian rug, I looked up. I looked for my little brother, the boy I used to read to, the boy whose scraped knees I bandaged because Monica was too busy hosting brunches, the boy I have covered for, lied for, and protected for 16 years. I saw him standing by the fireplace. He was holding his phone. For a split second, a foolish, naive hope flared in my chest. I thought, he is calling 911. He is calling for help. He sees what she did, and he is finally going to stop it. But he was not dialing. He was holding the phone up, vertically. The screen was glowing. He was framing the shot. He was recording. He was not recording evidence to save me. I know my brother. I know that little smirk that played on the corner of his mouth, a mirror of his mother's cruelty. He was recording because it was drama. He was recording because it was content. He was recording because seeing his big sister humiliated, beaten, and sprawled in the wreckage of the Christmas tree was not a tragedy to him. It was a spectacle. That realization hit me harder than the floor. My brother, my baby brother, looked at my pain and saw a viral moment. He saw an opportunity to get likes. He saw a scene for his story. The paramedic touches my shoulder. pulling me out of the dark spiral of my thoughts. We are 5 minutes out from the hospital. Lena, I need to take your vitals again. I nod, numbly. I look down at my wrist. They have put a plastic bracelet on me. It has a barcode. It has a patient number. And it has my name. Lena Carter. Just my name, not Noah's sister, not Greg's daughter, not Monica's stepdaughter. For 28 years, I have been an accessory in their life. I have been the prop they move around to make the scene look family-friendly. I have been the ornament they hang on their tree, shiny enough to look good, silent enough not to cause trouble, and fragile enough to break without anyone caring. Tonight, under the flashing lights of this ambulance, something inside me has shifted. The fear is evaporating, replaced by a clarity so sharp it feels like the shard of glass I pulled out of my elbow. They think this is over. They think they can hush this up. They think Monica will come to the hospital with her crocodile tears, tell the doctors I had a manic episode and fell, and Greg will write a check to smooth it over. They think Noah will delete the video or keep it as a private joke. They are wrong. I close my fingers into a fist, ignoring the sting of the glitter and the dried blood. The rhythm of the siren sounds like a war drum now. I am not going back to be their ornament. I am not going back to be their servant. Noah thought he was just capturing a funny moment of family dysfunction. He thought he was humiliated me, but he does not realize what he has actually done. By holding up that phone, by choosing to broadcast my pain instead of helping me, he has handed me the match. He wanted a show? He wanted the world to see the Carter family Christmas? Fine. I stare at the reflection of the red and blue lights dancing in the IV drip bag. Tonight is Christmas Eve, the holiest night of the year, a night for miracles, and my miracle is this. I survived the fall, and now I am going to make sure that when the sun rises, the perfect, pristine, golden facade of the Carter family burns to the ground. The ambulance slows down. We are arriving. The doors are about to open. I take a deep breath, tasting the iron in my mouth. Let the doctors ask. Let the police come. Let the questions start. I am done protecting them. I am done lying for them. The tree is down. The ornaments are broken. And the sister they thought was weak is about to show them exactly what happens when you treat a human being like a decoration for 28 years. The doors swing open, rushing in the freezing night air. Showtime. To understand why I ended up in the back of an ambulance on Christmas Eve with a shattered face and a shattered heart, you have to understand Maple Ridge. It is one of those wealthy suburbs just outside of Denver where the snow always seems to fall in perfect, cinematic layers, and the houses look like they were plucked straight from a catalog. In our neighborhood, Christmas was not a holiday. It was a blood sport. It was a competition of aesthetics where affection was measured in wattage. The larger your tree, the brighter your lights, the more expensive your wreath, the happier your family must be. That was the logic. I learned this logic very young. My biological mother died of ovarian cancer when I was 11 years old. She was a quiet, warm woman who liked mismatched ornaments and hot cocoa made with water, not milk. After she passed, the house felt like a lung that had forgotten how to breathe. But the grief did not last long. At least, not for the house itself. My father, Greg, remarried 18 months later. Enter Monica. Monica was everything my mother was not. She was vibrant, sharp, and terrifyingly efficient. She was a woman who spoke in exclamation points but acted in cold, calculated semicolons. She did not just move into our house. She curated it. She replaced the comfortable, worn sofas with stiff, beige sectionals that we were terrified to sit on. She replaced the mismatched mugs with bone china. And very slowly, very subtly, she replaced me. There was never any physical violence when I was a child. I want to make that clear. If you are looking for stories of wire hangers or being locked in a closet, that is not my story. Monica was far too smart for bruises. Bruises leave evidence. Bruises make teachers ask questions. No, Monica specialized in a different kind of violence. She specialized in the slow erosion of the self. She took a grieving 11-year-old girl and convinced her that her only value on this earth was how useful she could be to others. It started when I was 13. That was the first Christmas under the regime of Monica. We were hosting the annual neighborhood mixer. I remember coming downstairs in a dress I thought was pretty, ready to greet the guests. Monica looked me up and down, her smile tight and unmoving. "Lena, darling," she said, her voice dripping with that sugary condescension she had perfected. "You are not really going to just stand around, are you? We are a team here. I need someone I can rely on. You are so much more mature than the other girls your age. I need you to manage the coats and keep the hors d'oeuvres tray full. Can you be my big girl? Can you be my right hand?" I beamed. I was 13. I was desperate for approval. I wanted to be needed. I spent the entire night running back and forth to the kitchen, taking heavy winter coats from strangers, and refilling trays of shrimp cocktails. I did not talk to anyone. I did not play with the other kids. At the end of the night, my feet were throbbing. But Monica hugged me and told my father, right in front of me, "Lena has such a natural instinct for the home. Greg, she is going to make someone a wonderful wife one day." My father nodded, looking at me with a vague sense of pride. That was the moment the trap snapped shut. Being a servant was framed as being mature. Being invisible was framed as being reliable. Then came Noah. Noah was born when I was 14, if I was the staff. Noah was the prince. He was the son my father had always wanted, a boy, an heir, a miniature version of Greg Carter to carry on the family name and the family ego. From the moment he took his first breath, the gravitational pull of the house shifted entirely to him. Christmas became the festival of Noah. I remember the mornings vividly. We would wake up, and the living room would be buried under a mountain of wrapping paper, but the geography of that mountain was distinct. On one side, there would be a modest pile for me: clothes, school supplies, maybe a new desk lamp or a set of luggage, gifts that were practical, gifts that told me my role was to work, to study, to go away. On the other side was Noah's kingdom. Every year, it escalated. When he was 5, it was a motorized Jeep he could drive around the driveway. When he was 10, it was the newest gaming console and a flat-screen television for his bedroom. When he was 12, it was a specialized mountain bike that cost more than my first semester of community college tuition. "Oh, look at him," Monica would squeal, clapping her hands as Noah tore through the paper, tossing the scraps on the floor for me to pick up. "He is a natural leader. Greg, look at how he commands the room." That was the narrative. Noah was loud, demanding, and charismatic, so he was labeled a leader. I was quiet, organized, and obedient, so I was labeled helpful. "Noah wants to play basketball," my father would announce to the dinner table, his chest puffing out. "We are getting him the best private coaching in the state. The kid has potential. He is going to be a star." Nobody asked about my grades, even though I had a 4.0 average. Nobody asked about my interest in data science or my acceptance into the advanced placement math program. My achievements were expected. They were the baseline. Noah's achievements were miracles. If Noah managed to tie his shoes correctly, it was treated as an act of genius. If I brought home an A-, I was asked why I was losing focus. But the most insidious part was not the gifts. It was the emotional blackmail. I remember one specific Tuesday in December when I was 16. I had been up until 2 a.m. studying for finals. I came home from school exhausted, dragging my feet. The house was a whirlwind of activity because Monica had decided to host an impulsive winter solstice dinner for my father's partners. "Lena," Monica called out from the kitchen the moment I walked through the door. "Thank goodness you are home. The caterer messed up the napkins. I need you to fold these 50 linens into swans, now." I dropped my backpack. "Monica," I said, my voice cracking with fatigue, "I have a calculus final tomorrow. I really need to study. Can't we just use the napkins as they are?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Monica put down her wine glass. She turned to me, her expression shifting from busy hostess to wounded martyr. She sighed, a long, tragic sound. "I suppose I just expected too much of you. Lena, I thought you cared about this family. Your father is working so hard to pay for this house, to pay for the food you eat, and you cannot spare 20 minutes to help him look good? She did not yell. She never yelled. She just made you feel like a parasite. Then she played her ace card. Noah is in the living room watching TV. He looks up to you so much. Lena, do you want him to see his big sister acting so selfish? Do you want to teach him that family does not matter? Selfish. That was the word she used to cut me. Anytime I had a need, a want, or a boundary, I was selfish. Anytime I expressed exhaustion, I was ungrateful. I folded the napkins. I folded all 50 of them into perfect swans. I stayed up until 4 in the morning studying for calculus. I got an A. My father never mentioned the grade, but he did mention that the napkins looked presentable. The absolute breaking point of my childhood. The moment I realized I was not a daughter, but a prisoner of their expectations, happened when I was 17. It was the Saturday before Christmas. There was a magnificent light festival at the Denver Botanic Gardens. Everyone at my high school was going. My 2 best friends, Sarah and Emily, had bought a ticket for me. It was the first time I had really wanted to do something just for myself during the holidays. I had planned it for weeks. I had finished all my chores. I had wrapped all the gifts for the family, even the ones from Monica to my father. I walked into the kitchen, my heart pounding in my throat. Monica was arranging a centerpiece of holly and ivy. Monica, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I am going out tonight. Sarah and Emily are picking me up at 6. We are going to the light festival. She stopped arranging the holly. She did not look at me. She just stared at the red berries in her hand. Tonight? She asked, her voice soft, dangerous. Yes, I said. I finished everything you asked me to do. Monica turned slowly. She looked at me with eyes that were wide and brimming with manufactured disappointment. But Lena, tonight is the night we were going to make the gingerbread house. You know it is Noah's favorite tradition. Noah was 13 at the time. He was playing video games in the basement with his friends. He had not mentioned a gingerbread house in 3 years. He is playing Call of Duty, I said, a rare spark of defiance rising in my chest. He does not care about the gingerbread house. Monica gasped, putting a hand to her chest. How can you say that? He is your little brother. He has been waiting for this all week. He just pretends not to care because he is a teenager. But he needs this bonding time. He needs his sister. She walked over to me and placed her hands on my shoulders. Her grip was firm, not comforting. Go if you want. Lena, go look at some lights with your friends. But just know that you are breaking his heart. I thought you were better than this. I thought you loved him. But I guess teenage fun is more important to you than family. I stood there, paralyzed. I knew it was a lie. I knew Noah did not care. But the script was so deeply ingrained in me. Don't be selfish. Don't be the reason the family is unhappy. Don't embarrass us. The doorbell rang. It was Sarah. I looked at the door. I looked at Monica's cold, expectant face. I walked to the door and opened it. Sarah was standing there, smiling, her breath misting in the cold air. I can't go, I told her, my voice dead. What? Sarah asked, her smile fading. Why? Something came up. I said, family thing. I closed the door on my friend. I closed the door on my teenage years. I walked back into the kitchen. Monica did not say thank you. She just pushed a bowl of icing toward me. Get the consistency right this time, she said. Last year it was too runny. We made the gingerbread house. Noah never came upstairs to help. He stayed in the basement. I spent 4 hours gluing gumdrops onto a cardboard roof while Monica drank wine and criticized my symmetry. When my father came home that night, he saw the gingerbread house and smiled. Great job. Monica, he said, kissing her cheek. You always make this place feel so festive. Monica smiled, leaning into him. It is a labor of love, Greg. Just a labor of love. I stood in the corner, washing the sticky sugar off my hands, invisible. I learned my lesson that night. In the Carter house, love was not something you received. It was something you performed. And my role in the performance was to be the stagehand, working in the dark so the stars could shine. That was the night I stopped crying about it. That was the night I started counting the days until I could leave. But I did not know then that leaving would not be enough. I did not know that the chains they had wrapped around me were made of money and guilt, and that breaking them would require something much stronger than a teenage rebellion. It would require a war, and that war was still 10 years away. You would think that leaving the house to go to college would be the moment the umbilical cord of toxicity was finally cut. For most people, moving out means freedom. For me, it just meant my invoice address changed. I did not go to a fancy out-of-state university. There was no money for that. Or rather, there was no money allocated for me. The family funds were being aggressively funneled into a savings account labeled Noah's Future, so I stayed local. I went to community college for 2 years, transferred to a state school, and worked 30 hours a week the entire time. By the time I graduated and landed a job at Northline Metrics, a mid-sized data analytics firm in downtown Denver, I was already exhausted. I was 22 years old, but I felt 40. Northline Metrics was my sanctuary. It was a place of cold, hard logic. Rows of data, pivot tables, and quarterly reports did not gaslight you. Numbers did not tell you they loved you and then ask you to bleed for them. I was good at my job because I was good at finding patterns. And unfortunately, my family was just another data set with a very clear destructive trend line. But Monica had a genius for reframing exploitation as love. When I started making a real salary, $55,000 a year, starting out, Monica sat me down with a cup of tea and tears in her eyes. She told me how hard it was for my father, how the real estate market was fluctuating, how the cost of living in Maple Ridge was skyrocketing. "We are a family, Lena," she said, squeezing my hand. "And families help each other. We do not charge rent, of course. But now that you are working, it is only fair you contribute to the household pot, just until you get on your feet, just until Noah goes to college." It sounded reasonable. It sounded fair. So, I agreed. I sent them $1,500 a month. Then it became $1,600. Then, when the water heater broke, I covered the whole repair bill because Dad is having a slow month. I was living in a cheap apartment with 2 roommates, eating instant noodles, while sending nearly 40% of my take-home pay to a house where I did not even have a bedroom anymore. They had converted it into a gaming lounge for Noah. And where did that money go? It did not go to the water heater. It did not go to groceries. It went to the shrine of Noah. Every Christmas was a masterclass in financial irresponsibility. While I was budgeting $10 for lunch, Greg and Monica were turning the living room into a Best Buy showroom. One year it was the newest PlayStation and a virtual reality headset. The next, it was a specialized mountain bike with a frame made of carbon fiber. Then came the designer sneakers, Air Jordans that cost $600 a pair, limited drops that Monica camped out online to buy. They justified it with the BMW promise. It was a mantra in our house, repeated at every birthday and every holiday. When Noah turns 18, he gets the Beamer. It was spoken about with the reverence of a religious prophecy. My father drove a leased sedan. Monica drove a 5-year-old SUV. But Noah? Noah was going to have a brand new BMW 3 Series waiting in the driveway on his 18th birthday, which conveniently fell right around Christmas. It was going to be the symbol of the Carter family's success. It was going to prove to the neighbors, to the basketball scouts, to the world, that Noah was royalty. I knew the math didn't work. I worked in data. I saw the mail on the counter when I visited. I saw the overdue notices from American Express. I knew Monica was cycling through credit cards like a magician shuffling a deck, using one to pay off the minimum balance of another. I knew Greg was taking out loans against his future commissions, betting on house sales that had not even closed yet. They were drowning. They were bleeding cash, but the show had to go on. Then, when I was 25, the variable changed. My grandmother, my mother's mother, passed away. She had been a quiet woman, estranged from Greg after he remarried so quickly, but she had kept tabs on me. When she died, I was devastated. But the grief at the funeral was quickly overshadowed by the reading of the will. She left me a trust fund. It was not millions. It was not never work again money, but it was substantial. It was enough to put a down payment on a house, or go to grad school, or simply breathe for the first time in my life. The exact amount was sealed, known only to me and the executor, but the existence of the trust was impossible to hide. The moment Monica found out, the dynamic shifted. I was no longer just the helper. I was the bank. The conversation happened 2 weeks after the funeral. I was over for Sunday dinner. The roast chicken was dry, but the wine was expensive. Another performance. Greg cleared his throat, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. So, Lena, the lawyer called about your grandmother's estate. I nodded, keeping my eyes on my plate. Yes, it is being settled. Well, Greg said, leaning back, putting on his business expert face. 25 is young to handle that kind of liquidity. Most young people blow it on vacations or bad stocks. I have been thinking. I can bring it under my portfolio management. I can invest it for you. We can make it grow. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I appreciate that, Dad, but I think I'm going to leave it where it is for now. Monica chimed in, her voice shrill and bright. Oh, don't be silly. Lena, your father knows best. Besides, it is family money. Your mother would have wanted it to benefit the whole family. Family money, that was the phrase. My grandmother hated Monica. She would have burned that money before letting Monica buy a throw pillow with it. But now, suddenly, it was family money. And then, Greg dropped the hammer. Actually, he said, pouring himself more wine, we have been looking at the numbers for the BMW. Prices are up. The model Noah wants, the sport package, is running higher than we thought. If we pool the trust with what we have saved, we can pay cash. No interest. It makes financial sense. I stopped eating. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised me. And I realized he was not looking at a daughter. He was looking at a line of credit. You want to use my inheritance, I said slowly, to buy Noah a car? Monica laughed, a tinkling, dismissive sound, not just a car. Honey, an investment. Noah needs a safe, reliable vehicle for college. He is going to be driving to games, to practice. You want him to be safe, don't you? Or do you want him driving some junker where the brakes might fail? There it was, the guilt trap. If I said no, I was practically wishing death upon my brother. I looked at Noah. He was sitting across from me, tearing into a chicken leg. He was 16 then, already 6'2", wearing a hoodie that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He was listening, but he did not look grateful. He looked expectant. I said, that money is for my future. Dad, I might want to buy a condo or go back for my master's. Monica waved her hand as if swatting away a fly. Oh, Lena, be realistic. You are a girl. You will get married in a few years, and your husband will take care of the housing. That is how it works. But Noah? Noah has to build a career. He has to support a family one day. This trust is a stepping stone for the Carter name. You are just holding it. I froze. The sexism was so casual, so naked. It took my breath away. Girls get married. Boys get empires. In Monica's worldview, my financial independence was irrelevant because my ultimate destiny was to be absorbed into another man's household. But Noah needed resources because he was the protagonist of the story. Greg nodded solemnly. Monica is right. Lena, you have to think about the legacy. When Noah makes the NBA, and he will, this car will be part of the story. My sister believed in me. He will say, do you not want to be part of that story? I looked at Noah again. He wiped grease off his chin and grinned. It was a charming, lopsided grin, the one that got him out of homework and detention. Yeah, Lena, he said, chuckling, if you buy the Beamer, I will let you sit in the passenger seat when I get drafted. I might even let you pick the music, sometimes. He laughed. Greg laughed. Monica smiled benevolently. It was a joke. To them, it was just a light-hearted dinner table joke. But in that moment, the final thread of my delusion snapped. I looked at Noah. This boy who had never worked a day in his life, who had never worried about a bill, who assumed that my grandmother's death was simply a convenient funding source for his luxury vehicle. I looked at my father, who was willing to cannibalize his daughter's security to feed his son's ego. I looked at Monica, the architect of this theft. They did not see me. They really, truly did not see me. To them, I was not a person with dreams or needs. I was a resource. I was an ATM with feelings that could be managed with guilt trips. I was livestock. I forced a smile. It was a tight, painful grimace. I will think about it. I lied. That night, I went back to my apartment. I did not cry. Crying implies you are sad. I was not sad. I was calculating. I opened my laptop. I opened a new spreadsheet, and I began to type. I created columns: date, request, amount, emotional manipulation tactic used. I went back through my bank statements for 5 years. November 12th, $500. Reason: Noah needs elite basketball shoes for tryouts. January 3rd, $2,000. Reason: mortgage rate adjustment. I later found out they went skiing in Aspen that weekend. March 10th, $300. Reason: groceries. I documented every cent. I documented every conversation. I wrote down the passenger seat comment verbatim. I realized that night that I was working 2 jobs. My day job at Northline Metrics was analyzing market trends. My night job was analyzing my own exploitation, and the data was undeniable. I was funding a lifestyle I was not allowed to participate in. I was paying for the stage lights so Noah could shine, and I was paying for the darkness that hid their debt. The BMW was not just a car, it was the deadline. They expected the money by Christmas of Noah's 18th year. That gave me 2 years. 2 years to pretend, 2 years to play along, 2 years to let them think the ATM was open for business, while I quietly, methodically, changed the PIN code. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. Reflecting my face, I looked different, harder. You want a BMW? Noah? I whispered to the empty room. You want a story about how your sister helped you? I will give you a story, but you are not going to like the ending. The first step of my rebellion did not happen in a burning rage. It happened in a quiet, climate-controlled office in downtown Denver that smelled of lemon polish and old paper. I had told Monica I was working late at Northline Metrics. In reality, I was sitting across a mahogany desk from Arthur Hayes, the estate attorney who had handled my grandmother's will. He was a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of stillness that made you feel like he knew all your secrets before you even opened your mouth. I was terrified. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard, I thought he could hear it. I kept checking my phone, convinced that Monica had somehow installed a tracker on it, or that Greg would burst through the heavy oak doors demanding to know why I was meeting with his family lawyer. But Mr. Hayes was not my father's lawyer. He had been my grandmother's, and as it turned out, there was a massive difference. He slid a thick document across the desk toward me. "Lena," he said, his voice grave but kind, "I want you to read this paragraph. Clause 14, Section B." I looked down at the legal jargon. My eyes blurred for a second, then focused. The language was dense, but the meaning was clear. It stated that the trust was established for the sole and exclusive benefit of Lena Marie Carter. It went on to say that the trustee, me, had full discretion, but then there was a sentence that made my breath hitch. In the event that the beneficiary is subject to undue influence, coercion, or pressure to liquefy assets for the benefit of third parties, including immediate family members, the beneficiary retains the right to transfer the corpus of the trust to a protected, independent account without notice. I looked up at Mr. Hayes. My grandmother wrote this? She insisted on it. Mr. Hayes said. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. Your grandmother was very observant. Lena, she watched how your father and his wife operated. She told me once that she feared they looked at you not as a daughter, but as a resource. She wanted to make sure that when she was gone, you had an eject button. I felt a lump rise in my throat. hot and painful. I had spent my entire life believing I was invisible. I thought my role as the silent, suffering servant was just the natural order of things. But my grandmother had seen me. She had seen the way Monica handed me a vacuum cleaner while Noah opened gifts. She had seen the way Greg looked at my bank account with hungry eyes. She had seen it all, and she had built a legal shield for me from the grave. "So," I whispered, "they can't touch it? Even if they say it is for the family? Even if they say it is an emergency?" Mr. Hayes leaned forward. "Lena, look at me. This is your money. It is not family money. It is not Noah's money. It is yours. You have the legal right, the moral right, and the absolute power to say no. If they forge your signature, that is a felony. If they coerce you, that is actionable. You are the only person who can unlock that door. You have the right to say no." I had never heard an adult say those words to me. In the Carter household, no was treated like a profanity. No meant you were selfish. No meant you were ungrateful. But here, in this office, no was a legal right. It was a complete sentence. I left his office an hour later with a plan. It was not a fast plan. I could not just cut them off cold turkey. Not yet. If I did that, they would explode. They would guilt-trip me, harass me, show up at my job, or worse, manipulate the narrative so I looked like a monster before I was ready to leave. I needed to be strategic. I needed to be a ghost in my own life. The next day, during my lunch break, I walked 3 blocks to a small credit union that had no branches in Maple Ridge. I opened a checking account and a savings account in my name only. I requested paperless statements. I set up a new email address, lmcarter88@gmail.com, that was not linked to my phone or my primary laptop. I deposited $50. It was a small amount, but seeing that receipt with just my name on it felt like holding a grenade. This was my war chest. Over the next few months, I began to siphon money. It was a slow bleed. When I got my paycheck, I would immediately transfer 20% to the credit union before sending my contribution to Monica. When they asked why my contribution was light, I lied. I told them health insurance premiums had gone up. I told them the company had cut bonuses. I told them I had parking tickets. I became an expert liar, and the strange thing was, they believed me easily. They were so used to me being the honest, dutiful doormat that it never occurred to them I might be capable of deception. They just sighed, complained about how hard it was to maintain the house, and asked if I could pick up extra shifts. But the real awakening didn't happen at the bank. It happened in the break room at Northline Metrics. I was standing by the coffee machine, staring blankly at the dark liquid dripping into the pot. I was exhausted. Monica had called me at 6 a.m. to demand I book a caterer for the upcoming Christmas party because she was too overwhelmed with her yoga schedule. Rita, one of the senior analysts, walked in. Rita was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She had been watching me for months. She had seen me taking calls in the hallway, seen me hunched over my phone transferring money, seen the dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. "Rough morning?" she asked, pouring herself a cup. "Just family stuff," I muttered. "My stepmom needs help with the party planning, and my dad needs help with, well, everything." Rita took a sip of her coffee and looked at me over the rim of her mug. Her eyes were sharp but kind. "Lena," she said softly, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I do not want you to answer it right away. I just want you to think about it." I nodded, bracing myself for work feedback. "Do your parents treat you like a daughter, or do they treat you like a venture capital firm?" I blinked. "What?" Rita leaned against the counter. "I hear you on the phone. Honey, I hear you talking about transfers. I hear you apologizing for not having enough cash. I see you driving a 10-year-old Honda while you talk about your brother's tennis camps and new gear. It is just temporary." I stammered, the old script kicking in. "They are just going through a liquidity crunch. I am helping out. That is what families do." Rita shook her head. "No, Lena, families support each other. Financial abuse is when they use your loyalty to drain you dry so you never have the resources to leave them." They are not leaning on you. They are standing on your neck. Financial abuse. The term hung in the air, smelling of burnt coffee. I had never put those two words together. I knew about physical abuse. I knew about emotional abuse. But financial abuse? Was that a real thing? That night, instead of sleeping, I went down a rabbit hole. I found forums on Reddit. I found blogs written by estrangement counselors. I read stories about glass children, the siblings who are looked through so the parents can focus on the problem child or the star child. I read a post from a woman in Ohio that could have been written by me. My parents made me pay for my brother's college tuition while I was working 2 jobs, claiming it was for the family legacy. When I stopped paying, they told everyone I was stealing from them. I sat in the dark of my shared apartment, the glow of the screen illuminating my tears. I was not crazy. I was not selfish. I was a victim of a systemic, calculated extraction of resources. That was the night the sadness turned into cold, hard data. I opened a new folder on my laptop. I password protected it. I named it Project Exit. If I was going to break free, I needed evidence. If I cut them off, they would try to sue me. They would try to claim I had promised them the money verbally. They would try to destroy my reputation. I needed to be ready. I started archiving everything. I went back 3 years in my emails. I found the email from Greg. Lena, we need $5,000 for the roof repair immediately. We will pay you back next month. I printed the bank statement showing the transfer. I printed the next 6 months of statements showing 0 repayment. I screenshotted text messages from Monica. October 14th. Lena, don't forget the deposit for Noah's private coaching. It is $2,000. Put it on your card. Dad's is maxed out. We will sort it later. November 2nd. We need to boost the credit limit on your card. Sweetie, we want to get Noah that gaming setup for early Christmas. It is important for his morale. And then, the smoking gun. The BMW texts. There was a group chat they had added me to, titled Noah's Big 18th. Greg had written, target budget for the car is $55,000. Lena, we are counting on the trust to cover the bulk of this. It is the best use of those funds. Monica had replied, agreed. It is an investment in his image. Lena, make sure you talk to the lawyer about liquidating the assets by December 20th so we have cash in hand. I saved it all. I backed it up to the cloud. I backed it up to a USB drive that I kept in my locker at work. I was building a dossier. I was treating my family like a hostile corporate takeover, because that is exactly what they were. But evidence was not enough. I needed a landing zone. I knew that the moment I refused to pay for the car, I would be exiled. I could not stay in my current apartment. My name was on the lease. But Monica had a spare key for emergencies, and I knew she would come barging in. I needed a place they did not know about. I spent my lunch breaks touring studio apartments in the city. I looked for places with security doors and concierges. I found a unit in a converted warehouse district. It was small, barely 400 square feet. The view was of a brick wall. The kitchen was just a hot plate and a mini fridge. But when I stood in the center of that empty room, listening to the hum of the city outside, I felt something I had never felt in the mansion at Maple Ridge. I felt oxygen. The rent was $1,200 a month. It was high, but I could afford it if I stopped paying for Noah's lifestyle. I signed the lease with a shaking hand. I paid the deposit with a cashier's check from my secret credit union account. The lease started on January 1st. The timeline was set. Christmas was December 25th. Noah's birthday was December 26th. The unveiling of the BMW was scheduled for Christmas Eve, during the annual party. That was the deadline. That was the moment Greg and Monica expected me to hand over a check for $50,000. I walked out of the leasing office into the biting December wind. Snow was starting to fall, dusting the gray sidewalks of Denver. I drove to Maple Ridge that evening to help set up the tree. It was a massive noble fir, 12 feet tall, smelling of fresh pine and money. Monica was directing the operation like a general, barking orders at the hired help, while Noah sat on the couch playing a game on his phone. ignoring everyone. "Lena," Monica called out, snapping her fingers. "Don't just stand there. Get the ladder. The star needs to go up, and you are the only one with the patience to balance it." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had spent 15 years hollowing me out. I looked at my father, who was on the phone in the hallway, probably lying to a creditor. I looked at Noah, who didn't even look up to say hello. I went to the garage and got the ladder. I climbed up. I held the delicate crystal star in my hands. From this height, I could see the whole room. I could see the spot where the tree stood, magnificent and hollow. I placed the star on the very top. This year, I thought, my heart beating with a slow, steady rhythm, this year, the tree is not a decoration, it is a timer. They thought they were preparing for a coronation. They thought Christmas Eve would be the night Noah got his crown and his car. They did not know that I had the lease to my freedom in my glove compartment. They did not know that the quiet, reliable Lena had a lawyer and a dossier of evidence. I climbed down the ladder and wiped the pine sap from my hands. "That looks beautiful." "Lena," Monica said absently, already scrolling through Instagram, "make sure you sweep up the needles. We don't want the house looking messy for the party." "I will." I said, "I will clean up everything." I grabbed the broom. I swept the floor. I played my part, but as I swept, I looked at the reflection in the window. I did not see a servant anymore. I saw a demolition expert, waiting for the countdown to hit 0. The mask was still on, but the cracks were starting to show. And on Christmas Eve, right here under this perfect tree, I was going to let it shatter. The atmosphere in the Carter household on Christmas Eve was not festive, it was theatrical. If you have ever been backstage at a high-budget production right before the curtain rises, you know the specific kind of tension I'm talking about. It is the smell of hairspray, adrenaline, and desperate perfectionism. Monica had outdone herself this year. She had hired a professional team to decorate the exterior of the house. They had draped thousands of warm white LED lights over every eave, bush, and railing. There was a wreath the size of a tractor tire hanging on the front door, made of real holly and silk ribbons imported from France. She had even hired a professional actor to dress as Santa Claus and wave to the neighbors' children from our front porch for 2 hours, just to establish dominance in the subdivision. I watched her from the top of the stairs as she posed for a selfie in front of the 12-foot tree. She tilted her head, flashed a smile that did not reach her eyes, and tapped away at her screen. I knew exactly what the caption would say before she even posted it. "So grateful for this beautiful life. Family is everything. Blessed family goals. Carter Christmas." It was nauseating. My father, Greg, was pacing the hallway in his velvet smoking jacket, checking his watch every 30 seconds. He had invited half the partners from his real estate firm, plus the vice president of the regional bank. Ostensibly, the party was to celebrate the holidays. In reality, it was a victory lap for Noah. The narrative Greg was spinning was that Noah had been selected for the state basketball team. The truth, which I knew because I was the one who paid the application fees, was that Noah had been invited to a pre-selection development camp. It was a pay-to-play tryout that anyone with $2,000 could attend. But in the Carter household, the truth was flexible. To the guests arriving in their Audis and Range Rovers, Noah was already the next Michael Jordan, and Greg was the genius father who had nurtured this talent. And me? I was the stage manager. I had been running since 5 o'clock that morning. I had finalized the catering order for 300 bacon-wrapped dates and 200 mini crab cakes. I had created the Spotify playlist, carefully curating a mix of classic jazz and modern pop covers that Monica deemed classy but approachable. I had wrapped the last 40 gifts, tying bows until my fingers were raw and covered in paper cuts. I was operating on 4 hours of sleep. I had pulled a double shift at Northline Metrics the day before to cover the extra $500 Monica had demanded for the emergency champagne upgrade. My bank account was almost empty, but my secret account at the credit union was safe. That thought was the only thing keeping me upright. At 6 o'clock, 1 hour before the guests were due to arrive, I was in the kitchen arranging a platter of artisanal cheeses. The kitchen was a war zone of smells: roasting ham, spiced cider, and the sharp chemical tang of cleaning products. Monica swept in, a glass of Chardonnay in her hand. She was wearing a red silk dress that looked like it cost more than my car. "Lena," she said, her voice dropping to that low, dangerous register she used when we were alone. "That cheese board looks a little sparse. Did you not buy the extra brie I asked for?" "I bought exactly what was on the list, Monica," I said, keeping my eyes on the cutting board. She sighed, a sound of profound suffering. "Well, spread it out. Make it look generous. Perception is reality. Lena, you should know that by now." She took a sip of wine and leaned against the granite island, watching me work. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Listen to me," she said, and the sweetness in her tone curdled. "Tonight is important. Your father has some very influential people coming, and Noah, well, this is Noah's night. We are going to make the announcement about the car around 9 o'clock. I felt my hand freeze on the cheese knife. The announcement. "I want everything to go smoothly," Monica continued, examining her manicure. "I do not want any of your moods. I do not want any passive-aggressive comments about money. We are going to show everyone how much we support Noah. We are going to show them that he deserves that BMW. Do you understand?" I sliced into a block of sharp cheddar. "I understand that you want a show," I said flatly. Monica set her glass down hard on the counter. "Do not take that tone with me. We are doing this for his future. And since you are the one with the trust fund just sitting there gathering dust, it is the least you can do. Honestly, Lena, sometimes I wonder if you are jealous of him." I almost laughed. Jealous? I was not jealous. I was horrified. Before I could respond, my father walked in. He smelled of expensive cologne and anxiety. He was holding a manila folder. "Ladies," he said, forcing a jovial smile. "Everything looks great. Smells fantastic. Lena, quick second." He walked over to me and placed the folder on the counter, right next to the grapes. "I need you to sign these before the party starts," he said, uncapping a heavy fountain pen. I wiped my hands on a towel and looked at the papers. The header read, "Investment Authorization and Power of Attorney. Limited Scope." "What is this?" I asked, though I knew exactly what it was. Greg laughed, a nervous, barking sound. "Just standard paperwork. Honey, remember we talked? I am going to move the trust assets into a high-yield portfolio I manage. It will grow much faster than whatever boring bond fund your grandmother had it in. And this authorizes the withdrawal for the car purchase so we can present the check to the dealer on Tuesday." He held the pen out to me. The nib glinted under the recessed kitchen lights. "Just sign at the bottom," he said. "I have tabbed the pages. It will take 2 seconds." I looked at the pen. I looked at his face. He was smiling, but his eyes were cold. Hard pebbles. He was not asking. He was demanding. He needed this money. I could see the desperation twitching in the corner of his eye. If I did not sign this, the check for the BMW would bounce. The house of cards would fall. I took a deep breath. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my voice came out steady. "I can't sign this right now. Dad." The smile dropped from his face instantly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it is a legal document." I said, "I need to read it. I am not going to sign a power of attorney without reading the terms." Greg's face flushed a deep, ugly red. "Lena, we do not have time for you to play lawyer. The guests will be here in 45 minutes. This is for your brother. Do you not trust me? I am your father. I am a professional." Monica chimed in, stepping closer. "You are always making things difficult. Lena, why do you have to be so dramatic? Just sign the paper. Your father knows what is best." I picked up the folder. "I will take it to my room." I said, "I will read it tonight after the party. If it looks okay, we can talk tomorrow." "That is not good enough," Greg snapped, his voice rising. "We need to secure the funds tonight." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then you should have given it to me a week ago. I am not signing it now." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of Christmas carols playing from the living room speakers. Silent night. The irony was palpable. Just then, the kitchen door swung open. Noah walked in. He was wearing his team hoodie, the one I had paid for, and sweatpants. He looked relaxed, happy, and completely oblivious to the tension that was thick enough to choke on. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed a Gatorade, and took a long swig. "Yo," he said, wiping his mouth. "Place looks dope. Good job. Lena." He walked over and clapped a hand on my shoulder. He squeezed it, a gesture that was meant to be affectionate but felt possessive. "You ready for tonight?" he asked, grinning. "I told the guys you were buying me the 3 series. They didn't believe me. They said, 'No way your sister is that cool.' I told them. 'Bro, my sister is legendary. She knows I'm going to the league.'" He looked at me with those bright, expectant eyes. He did not see a person. He saw a wallet. He saw a fan. He saw a means to an end. "Don't kill the mood, okay?" he added, leaning in slightly. "Mom said you were being weird about the money. Just chill. It's family money, right? We all win when I make it." He winked. He actually winked at me. Then he turned to Greg. "Dad, did you invite the scout from CU?" Greg's face instantly softened. He turned away from me, the anger replaced by adoring subservience. I left a message. "Champ, I think he is coming." Noah fist-pumped. Sick. I used that moment to slip away. I grabbed the folder and walked out of the kitchen, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. Neither of them stopped me. They were too busy discussing Noah's imaginary future to worry about the daughter they thought they had already conquered. I walked up the stairs to my old bedroom. It was not really my room anymore. It was a guest room that doubled as Noah's gaming storage. There were boxes of his old cables and controllers stacked in the corner. My old posters were gone, replaced by generic landscape paintings Monica had bought at Home Goods. I closed the door and locked it. I went to the closet and pulled out my suitcase. It was half-packed. Inside, hidden under my sweaters, was a thick plastic file folder. I opened it. Inside was the lease for my new studio apartment, signed and dated. Inside was the printout from the credit union showing my independent funds. Inside was the copy of the trust document, with the section about undue influence highlighted in yellow neon. I tossed my father's investment authorization on the bed. I did not need to read it. I knew what it said. It said, "I, Lena Carter, hereby agree to set myself on fire so my brother can stay warm." I looked around the room. I looked at the bed where I used to cry when I was 12. I looked at the desk where I studied for hours to get straight A's, hoping someone would notice. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single silver key. It was just a small piece of metal, but it felt heavy and hot in my palm. The key to the studio. The key to the door that only I could open. "Tonight," I whispered to the empty room. I could hear the doorbell ringing downstairs. The first guests were arriving. The performance was starting. The fake Santa was probably waving. The lights were twinkling. The stage was set for the perfect Carter family Christmas. They expected a coronation. They expected a check. They expected the docile, grateful daughter to hand over her inheritance and smile for the camera. I put the key back in my pocket. I smoothed down my dress. I checked my face in the mirror. I looked pale, but my eyes were clear. There was no fear left, only a cold, sharp determination. I unlocked the door and stepped out into the hallway. Downstairs, the music swelled. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I walked down the stairs to join the party. I was walking into the lion's den, but for the first time in my life, I was not the prey. I was the hunter, and I had the one weapon they never saw coming: the truth. The party was a sensory overload, a masterpiece of suburban excess designed to suffocate any stray thought of reality. By 8 o'clock, the house was packed. The air was thick with the scent of pine, expensive perfume, and warm cider. A jazz remix of Jingle Bells thumped softly in the background, just loud enough to cover the sound of ice clinking against crystal, but quiet enough to allow for gossip. I moved through the crowd like a ghost in a cocktail dress, holding a silver tray of bacon-wrapped dates. I was smiling. My face hurt from smiling. "Oh, Lena. Darling," It was Mrs. Gable from down the street. The decorations are stunning. Your mother really outdid herself. Stepmother, I corrected in my head, but out loud I just nodded. Thank you. Mrs. Gable, please, have a date. I wove through the groups of men in suits and women in velvet, catching snippets of conversation that made my stomach churn. Did you hear? Greg is getting the boy a BMW for his birthday, a 3 Series. Well, Noah is going to be a star. You have to invest in talent like that. And the sister? What does she do? Oh, she is the quiet one, works in computers or something. But I heard she is helping pay for the car. Such a good girl, sacrificing for the family name. Sacrificing. The word tasted like ash. They made it sound noble. They made my exploitation sound like a saintly virtue. I was not a victim in their eyes. I was a willing martyr, happily throwing myself onto the pyre so Noah could rise like a phoenix in a luxury sedan. I found myself cornered near the fireplace by Mrs. Dalton, a kind, slightly nosy neighbor who had always been nice to me. She touched my arm gently. Lena, how is work? Are you still at that data firm? I remember you talking about getting your master's degree. Is that still the plan? For a second, the mask slipped. I felt a rush of gratitude. Someone remembered. Someone knew I had dreams that did not involve serving hors d'oeuvres. Yes, I said, my voice brightening. I am actually looking at programs for next fall. I have been saving up. And, Lena. My father's voice boomed, cutting me off. He appeared beside us, sliding an arm around my shoulder. His grip was tight, his fingers digging into my deltoid muscle. Mrs. Dalton, always good to see you, Greg said, flashing his salesperson's smile. Don't let Lena bore you with work talk. She is very practical. Our Lena. She knows that family comes first right now. Master's degrees can wait. Right. Honey, we have big things happening for Noah this year. He squeezed my shoulder. It was a warning. Shut up. Stick to the script. Mrs. Dalton looked at me, confused. Oh, I see. Well, it is lovely that you are so supportive. She drifted away, sensing the tension. I felt small. I felt like I was shrinking, dissolving into the floorboards. My father leaned close to my ear, his breath smelling of scotch. Circulate, Lena. Stop cornering people, and smile. You look miserable. He pushed me gently back toward the kitchen. By 9 o'clock, the tension in the room had shifted. The casual mingling was over. It was time for the main event. Greg stood by the massive Christmas tree, tapping a spoon against his champagne glass. The sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the chatter. The room went silent. Everyone, if I could have your attention for a moment, Greg announced, his voice projecting easily to the back of the room. The crowd gathered. They formed a semicircle around the tree, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of the fairy lights. Monica stood to Greg's left, looking radiant and smug. Noah stood to his right, leaning against the mantel with practiced nonchalance, arms crossed over his chest. He was smirking. He knew what was coming. He had probably rehearsed his shocked face in the mirror. Monica held up her phone. She was live streaming. I could see the little red live icon on the screen. First of all, Merry Christmas to all our wonderful friends and neighbors, Greg began. This year has been special for the Carters. As many of you know, our Noah has been invited to the state development camp for basketball. Applause broke out. Noah nodded, giving a little wave, soaking it in. But talent needs support, Greg continued, his voice dropping to a serious, emotional register. And in this family, we support each other. We believe in investing in the future, and tonight, we want to make a very special presentation. He gestured to the base of the tree. There, sitting on the white fir tree skirt, was a small silver box. It was wrapped in a blue ribbon. We all know Noah turns 18 tomorrow, Greg said, and a young man with his potential needs a vehicle that matches his drive. But this gift is not just from me and Monica. He turned his eyes toward me. I was standing near the edge of the crowd, holding a tray of empty glasses. The spotlight of his attention felt like a physical weight. This gift was made possible by the incredible generosity and sacrifice of his big sister. "Lena," Greg said. "Lena, come here." The crowd turned. 50 pairs of eyes landed on me. There was a murmur of approval. What a good sister. How sweet. I froze. My feet felt nailed to the floor. "Come on, Lena. Don't be shy," Monica called out, her voice shrill with forced cheer. She panned the phone camera toward me. I walked forward. I had no choice. I walked into the center of the circle, next to the tree. The scent of pine was overwhelming. Greg put his hand on my back. He spoke to the room, but his words were a cage. My mother-in-law, Lena's grandmother, left a trust, and Lena, in her wisdom and love for her brother, has decided that the best way to honor that legacy is to invest in Noah's future. She is helping us secure his dream car, a brand new BMW. The room gasped. Oohs and ahs echoed. Noah grinned, stepping forward. "Thanks, sis," he said, loud enough for the camera. "You're the real MVP." Greg picked up the silver box. He held it out to me. "Lena, why don't you do the honors? Give your brother the key." He thrust the box into my hands. It was light. It was empty. A prop. The real key would come next week, after I signed the check. This was just theater. This was just to lock me in publicly, to make it impossible for me to back out without humiliating myself. I looked at the box. I looked at the tree. I looked at Noah's smug, expectant face. I looked at Monica's phone, the unblinking eye of the camera recording my submission. They had written the script. They had set the stage. They had cast me as the saintly, silent donor. All I had to do was hand him the box. All I had to do was smile and disappear for another 10 years. I took a breath. It was deep and shaky. I looked at the crowd. I saw Mrs. Dalton watching me. I saw the neighbors. And suddenly, I saw the future. I saw myself at 30, at 40, still paying for Noah's mistakes, still invisible, still hollowed out. No. The word was inside me, solid and real. I looked at Greg. His smile faltered slightly. He saw something in my eyes he didn't recognize. "Go ahead, Lena," he whispered through his teeth. "Give it to him." I raised my head. I spoke clearly. I did not shout. I did not scream. I just spoke with the volume of a person who is done lying. "No," I said. The room went quiet, not the respectful silence of a speech, but the confused, heavy silence of a mistake. "What?" Noah asked, his grin dropping. "There is no key in this box," I said, my voice gaining strength, "and there is no car." Greg's fingers dug into my arm. "Lena, stop joking. Give him the box." I pulled my arm away. I stepped back, creating space between me and the lie. "I am not joking. Dad," I looked at the guests. I looked straight into Monica's camera lens. "The trust fund my grandmother left me is not for a BMW. It is not for Noah. It is mine, and I am not buying him a car." The silence shattered. A collective gasp ripped through the room. Monica's face went white. She lowered the phone, but she didn't stop recording. She was too stunned to move. Greg looked like he had been slapped. His face turned a deep, violent purple. "Lena," he hissed, loud enough for the front row to hear. "You are drunk. Go to your room." "I am not drunk," I said. "I am just finished. I am finished paying for everything. I am finished being the bank for this family." I turned to Noah. He looked like a child whose ice cream had just fallen in the dirt, confused, angry, and totally uncomprehending. "You want a BMW?" "Noah?" I asked. "Then get a job." That was the moment the bomb went off. The perfect image. The family goals. The carefully curated lie. It all evaporated. The tree still sparkled. The music still played. But the air in the room had turned into poison. The guests shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other, realizing they were witnessing something raw and ugly. Greg took a step toward me. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "You ungrateful little—" he started, his voice trembling with rage. But I did not flinch. I stood my ground next to the tree I had decorated. Under the lights I had hung, and for the first time in my life, I did not look like part of the scenery. I looked like the person who was tearing it down. The silence that followed my refusal was not empty. It was heavy, suffocating, and vibrating with potential energy. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a car crash, when you see the headlights coming but haven't felt the impact yet. Monica was the first to move. Her socialite instincts, honed over decades of pretending everything was fine, kicked in with terrifying speed. She let out a laugh, a high, brittle sound that sounded like wind chimes tangling in a storm. "Oh, listen to her," she exclaimed, turning to the guests with a wide, manic smile. Her eyes were darting around the room, assessing the damage. "Lena has had a bit too much of the punch, I think. She loves to make these little dramatic jokes. It is just her dry sense of humor." She stepped toward me, to the audience. It looked like a mother approaching a daughter to guide her. But I saw her eyes. They were black holes of rage. She reached out and grabbed my wrist, her fingers, manicured with gel polish the color of dried blood, clamped down over my pulse point. It was not a hold. It was a vice. Her nails dug into the soft skin of my inner arm, sharp enough to break the surface. She pulled me close, putting her face right next to mine, pretending to kiss my cheek. "You are going to fix this," she hissed, her voice so low only I could hear it. "You are going to tell them you were joking. You are going to hand him that box. Or so help me God. You will regret it for the rest of your miserable life. Are you insane?" I flinched at the pain in my wrist, but I did not pull away. I let the guests see her grip. I let them see the way her knuckles were white. "I am not joking, Monica," I said, keeping my voice steady, refusing to lower it to a whisper. "I am not buying the car." Greg was beside us now. The jovial host mask had slipped completely, revealing the weak, desperate bully underneath. He did not grab me, not yet, but he leaned in, his body blocking me from the view of the bank vice president. "Lena," he growled, and the smell of scotch on his breath was overpowering. "Stop this now. You are embarrassing the family. You are humiliating your brother. Give him the box." I looked at Noah. He was still standing by the mantel, but the shock had morphed into a dark, petulant fury. He looked like a king who had been denied his tribute. I looked back at my father. I am not the one humiliating him. "Dad," I said, You promised him a $50,000 car you could not afford. That is not my fault." That was the sentence that did it. That was the sentence that snapped the final thread of control. Monica let go of my wrist. She did not scream. She did not yell. She just moved. Her arms swung out in a wide, vicious arc. Crack! The sound was louder than I expected. It sounded like a gunshot in the enclosed room. Her open palm connected with the side of my face, right across my cheekbone and ear. The force of it knocked me sideways. I stumbled. My shoulder hit the lower branches of the Christmas tree. The tree wobbled. A dozen vintage glass ornaments, the ones I had carefully hung just hours ago, shook loose. They fell to the hardwood floor. Smash, tink, crash. The sound of shattering glass filled the room, echoing the stinging heat that was spreading across my face. The room erupted. "Oh my God!" someone screamed. It sounded like Mrs. Dalton. A few guests gasped. A glass dropped from someone's hand and broke on the floor, joining the wreckage of the ornaments. I stood there, stunned. My hand went to my cheek. It was throbbing, a hot, pulsing rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I tasted copper in my mouth. My lip had split against my teeth. I looked at Monica. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving under the red silk dress. Her hand was still raised, shaking slightly. She did not look sorry. She looked like she wanted to do it again. "You ungrateful little bitch," she spat out, loud and clear. "After everything we did for you, after we took you in, after we gave you a home." Greg did not step in to stop her. He did not rush to check on his daughter. Instead, He stepped forward and grabbed my shoulders. He shook me. It was a violent, jarring motion that snapped my head back and forth. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted, his face inches from mine, spit flying from his lips. "You come into my house, you eat my food, and you try to sabotage this family? You try to ruin Noah's night?" This was it. This was the violence they had kept hidden under layers of passive aggression for 15 years. It was finally out in the open, raw and ugly, illuminated by the twinkling fairy lights. I tried to pull away. "Let go of me!" I yelled. Greg only tightened his grip. His fingers were bruising my arms. He was shaking me like a rag doll. "Apologize," he roared. "Apologize to your brother." In the chaos, amidst the spinning room and the throbbing pain, my eyes sought out the one person I thought might stop this. Noah. My little brother, the boy I had protected, the boy I had folded napkins for, the boy whose lies I had covered. Surely, even in his selfishness, he would not stand for this. Surely, seeing his father manhandling his sister and his mother striking her face would wake him up. I locked eyes with him across the room. "Noah," I gasped. "Help me." Noah looked at me. He looked at Monica, who was advancing again, her eyes wild. He looked at Greg, who was pinning me in place. And then he did the unthinkable. He did not rush forward. He did not shout for them to stop. He did not drop his phone to call 911. He lifted his phone higher. He took a step back to get a better angle. He turned the screen horizontal. I saw his thumb tap the screen. I saw the interface of Instagram Live. He was not documenting a crime to help me. I knew that look on his face. It was the same look he had when he was playing a video game and winning. It was a look of detached amusement. It was the look of a content creator who had just stumbled upon a viral goldmine. He started speaking, not to us, but to the phone. "Yo, guys, are you seeing this?" he said, his voice smooth, practiced, the voice of an influencer. "My sister is literally ruining Christmas. Look at this psycho." He panned the camera from my bleeding lip to the broken ornaments on the floor, then back to Greg shaking me. "She promised to buy me my car and now she is backing out," he narrated, stepping closer to get a close-up of my humiliation. "Can you believe this? This is what I have to deal with. Family drama, Christmas fail." The betrayal hit me harder than Monica's hand. It pierced through my chest, cold and sharp. He was monetizing my abuse. He was turning the worst moment of my life into entertainment for his followers. Monica saw the phone. For a second, I thought she would stop. I thought she would realize the danger. But she was too far gone. The rage had blinded her. She saw the camera and, instead of shrinking away, she performed for it. She wanted the world to see her righteous indignation. She wanted the audience to agree with her. She lunged at me. She grabbed a handful of my hair. I screamed as she yanked my head back. "Tell them," she shrieked at the camera, pulling me so hard my neck popped. "Tell them you are a liar. Tell them you are a thief." She dragged me backward. I stumbled over the tree skirt. My heels caught on the rug. I fell, but Monica did not let go. She dragged me down, and then she shoved me. My body slammed into the side of the heavy oak coffee table. The impact knocked the wind out of me. A sharp pain radiated from my ribs. I lay there on the floor, gasping for air. The room was spinning. I looked up. Above me, the Christmas tree towered, indifferent and beautiful. The lights twinkled merrily. And right above me, blocking out the star, was Noah's phone. He was standing over me. He was zooming in. On the screen of his phone, which was facing me, I could see myself. I saw my hair disheveled. I saw the red mark blooming on my cheek. I saw the blood on my chin. And I saw the stream of comments flying up the side of the screen. "OMG, is she okay? WTF is happening? Call the cops. LOL, this family is crazy. Is that blood?" Noah laughed, a short, disbelief-filled chuckle. "Look at her," he said to his followers, just laying there. So dramatic. The cruelty was absolute. It was a vacuum of empathy. He did not see a human being on the floor. He saw content. That was when the spell broke for the rest of the room. The bystanders, the wealthy neighbors who had been frozen in shock, finally reactivated. "Stop it!" The scream came from Mrs. Dalton. She pushed through the crowd, her face pale with horror. "Get away from her!" she yelled at Greg and Monica. She pulled her own phone out of her clutch. Her hands were shaking, but she tapped the screen furiously. "I am calling the police," she announced, her voice trembling. "I am calling 911 right now." Greg blinked. The mention of the police seemed to pierce through his red haze. He looked around. He saw the guests staring at him with open disgust. He saw the bank vice president backing away toward the door. He looked down at his hands, as if wondering why they were making fists. "Mrs. Dalton, please," he stammered, holding up his hands. "It is just a family dispute. We don't need the authorities. Lena just..." She fell. He looked at me on the floor. "Tell her, Lena," he commanded, though his voice lacked its usual power. "Tell her you fell." I looked up at him from the carpet. I looked at the broken glass near my face. I looked at Noah, who was still filming, moving around Mrs. Dalton to keep me in the frame. I wiped the blood from my lip with the back of my hand. I looked at Mrs. Dalton. "He is lying," I said. My voice was weak, but it carried in the silent room. "He is lying." Mrs. Dalton nodded. She put the phone to her ear. "Yes," she said into the receiver. Her eyes locked on Monica. "I need police and an ambulance to the Carter residence on Maple Drive. There has been a domestic assault. Yes, the victim is bleeding." The word victim hung in the air. Monica let out a sob, not of remorse, but of terror. She realized, finally, that the camera was not her friend. She realized that Noah's live stream had just broadcast her felony to the entire world. "Noah!" she shrieked, turning on him. "Turn that off! Turn it off!" But Noah didn't turn it off. He backed away, keeping the camera rolling, capturing his mother's meltdown. He was capturing the police sirens that were already wailing in the distance. Or maybe that was just the ringing in my ears. I closed my eyes. I lay on the floor amidst the pine needles and the shattered ornaments. I hurt everywhere. My face burned. My ribs ached. My heart felt like it had been ripped out. But as I lay there, listening to the chaos erupting around me, Greg shouting at guests to leave, Monica crying about her reputation, Mrs. Dalton giving details to the dispatcher, and Noah narrating the fall of his own house, I realized something. They had done it. They had destroyed the picture. I did not have to expose them. I did not have to convince anyone. Noah, in his greed for attention, had done the work for me. He had broadcast the truth of the Carter family to the world. I opened my eyes and looked at the blinking red light on the smoke detector on the ceiling. It is over, I thought. And then, faintly, I heard the sirens getting louder. The blue and red lights began to flash through the front window, mixing with the white lights of the Christmas tree. Red, blue, just like the ornaments. I let out a breath I had been holding for 28 years. Let them come. Let them all come. The transition from the back of the ambulance to the emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and shouting voices. The rhythm of the siren died away, replaced by the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors and the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum. I was lifted, transferred, and wheeled through double doors that hissed open to reveal a world that was white, sterile, and mercifully devoid of Christmas decorations. A nurse with kind eyes and efficient hands began to cut away the sleeve of my dress to check my arm. Another was wiping the dried blood from my chin with a cool, wet cloth. "Can you tell us your name?" the doctor asked, flashing a light into my good eye. "Lena," I rasped. "Lena Carter." "Do you know where you are, Lena?" "Denver General," I said. "It is Christmas Eve." "Good," he said. "You have a contusion on your cheekbone and a laceration on your lip that might need 2 stitches. Your ribs are likely bruised from the fall. We are going to get you to X-ray." He stepped back, and the nurse moved in closer. She lowered her voice. A standard protocol I recognized from the domestic violence pamphlets I had read in secret. "Lena," she said softly, "the paramedics said you told them your stepmother did this. Do you want us to call the police? We can file a report right now." I lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, aching exhaustion. Did I want to call the police? The old voice in my head, the one Monica had planted there, screamed no. It screamed that calling the police would ruin the family. It screamed that Greg would lose his job. It screamed that I would be the villain who destroyed Noah's future. But then I remembered the tree. I remembered the box. I remembered the look on Noah's face. Before I could answer, the curtain to my cubicle was pulled back. A police officer stood there. She was a woman in her 40s, wearing a uniform that looked heavy with gear. She held a notepad in one hand and her personal cell phone in the other. Her badge read Officer Hernandez. She looked at the nurse, then at me. "Ms. Carter?" she asked. "Yes," I whispered. "I am Officer Hernandez. We received a call from a Mrs. Dalton at your residence regarding a domestic disturbance, but I need to be honest with you. Ms. Carter, we didn't just get a call." She stepped closer, her face grim. "We received multiple calls, and dispatch forwarded me a link about 10 minutes ago." "A link?" I asked, confused. The pain meds were starting to kick in, making my thoughts feel slow and syrupy. Officer Hernandez turned her phone around so I could see the screen. "I am sorry to show you this," she said, "but we need to confirm the identities of the people in this video." I looked at the screen. It was an Instagram interface. The video was looping. It was me. It was footage taken from a high angle, slightly shaky but clear enough to be damning. In the video, I was standing by the Christmas tree. Monica was lunging at me. The audio was crisp. The sound of her screaming, "Tell them you are a liar," cut through the hospital noise like a knife. Then, the video showed her grabbing my hair. It showed her dragging me backward. It showed her shoving me into the coffee table. And then, the camera panned to Greg, my father, who was standing there with his fists clenched, doing absolutely nothing to stop it. I stared at the video, paralyzed. It was not just a recording, it was a broadcast. At the top of the screen, I saw the username, Noah Carter Baller, and below it, the view count. 32,000 views. 32,000 people had watched my stepmother assault me. 32,000 people had watched my father let it happen. And the caption, I read the caption Noah had typed, likely in the seconds before the police arrived, thinking he was being funny, thinking he was just sharing some family drama. POV. When your sister ruins Christmas and mom snaps. Family fight, drama Carter. Christmas. I felt the bile rise in my throat. "He posted it?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "He put it online?" "He did." Officer Hernandez said, pulling the phone back, "It is currently trending locally on Twitter and has been reposted to TikTok. Ms. Carter, this video is evidence. It shows a clear assault. It shows battery. And because it was broadcast live, there is no way for the defense to claim it was edited or taken out of context." She looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional resolve. "Your brother," she said gently, "he did not just film it. He gave us the strongest case for prosecution I have seen in months. We have already detained both your father and your stepmother at the scene based on this footage." I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out, hot and stinging against my bruised skin. I cried not because I was safe. I cried because of the sheer, breathtaking cruelty of it. Noah had stood there and filmed me being beaten. He had framed it, captioned it, and shared it for likes. He had turned my trauma into content for his teenage followers. He thought it was a joke. He thought it was a game. But in his arrogance, in his desperation for attention, he had done the one thing I could never have done alone. He had destroyed their credibility. He had handed the world the truth on a silver platter. A commotion at the nurse's station made me open my eyes. "I am her attorney," a familiar voice boomed. "I need to see her immediately." Arthur Hayes walked into the cubicle. He was wearing a wool coat over his pajamas, looking disheveled but fierce. He must have driven straight from his bed the moment he saw the news or the video. "Mr. Hayes," I sobbed. He rushed to the side of the bed, his face pale. "Lena. My God, I saw it. My granddaughter sent me the link. She follows your brother." He looked at the officer. "I am Arthur Hayes. I represent Ms. Carter and her financial trust. I need to speak with my client, but you have my full cooperation. This was an aggravated assault." Officer Hernandez nodded. "We are processing the paperwork now. We will need a statement when she is ready." She stepped out, closing the curtain halfway to give us privacy. "Mr. Hayes pulled a chair close to the bed. He reached into his briefcase. He had brought his briefcase, and pulled out the file I knew so well. "Lena," he said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "I am so sorry I did not get you out of there sooner." "It is okay," I said, wiping my eyes. "I am out now." He opened the file. He pointed to a paragraph I had memorized. "Section 14, he said, the hardship and abuse clause. He looked at me, his lawyer mode taking over. "Normally, to activate this clause and sever all family access to the trust without a waiting period, we would need to petition a judge. We would need hearings. It could take months. They could fight it. They could claim you were mentally unstable." He tapped the screen of his phone, which was sitting on the bedside table. "But this video? This changes everything. This is irrefutable proof of physical coercion and violence committed in an attempt to extort assets. That is what Monica was screaming about, calling you a liar and a thief regarding the car money. It is on tape." He took a deep breath. "I can file an emergency injunction tonight. By tomorrow morning, the trust will be completely locked down. I will transfer sole trusteeship to you and a third-party institutional co-trustee of your choice. Your father will not be able to touch a dime. He will not even be able to see the balance. And because of the criminal charges that are undoubtedly coming, we can file for a permanent protective order that bars them from contacting you for any reason, including financial solicitation." I looked at him. "So it is done?" "It is done," Hayes said firmly. "Noah just saved you the trouble of a 2-year court battle. He handed us the smoking gun, the fingerprints, and the confession all in one file." I lay back against the pillow. I started to laugh. It was a dry, painful laugh that hurt my ribs, but I could not stop. "Noah," I wheezed. "My golden brother. He wanted to be famous so bad." Hayes looked at me with concern, but I waved him off. "He wanted a BMW, I said, staring at the ceiling, "and instead, he bought me my freedom." A social worker arrived 20 minutes later. She was a young woman named Sarah, who looked tired but kind. She explained the next steps. "Because the video is viral," she said, her voice low. "The district attorney is going to be aggressive. High-profile cases force their hand. They cannot sweep this under the rug. Your stepmother is facing assault charges. Your father is facing charges for facilitation and possible child endangerment, though since you are an adult, it will likely be assault by association." "And Noah?" I asked. Sarah hesitated. "That is complicated. He is a minor, and technically, he did not strike you, but recording an assault instead of intervening and then broadcasting it. Child Protective Services is involved. They are interviewing him now. He is claiming he did not know it would get that bad, that he was just documenting. But the court of public opinion? That is a different story." She handed me a clipboard. "This is a request for a temporary restraining order. It bars Greg, Monica, and Noah Carter from coming within 500 feet of you, your home, or your workplace." I took the pen. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the vibration of the ambulance ride that still lingered in my bones. I looked at the paper. Petitioner, Lena Carter. I signed it. The ink was dark and permanent. I then took the papers Mr. Hayes held out. Authorization for transfer of assets. I signed that too. With 2 signatures, I had effectively orphaned myself. I had cut the cord. I was homeless, battered, and alone in a hospital bed on Christmas Eve. But I was also rich, and I was free. I asked the nurse for my phone. It had been in my pocket when I fell. And remarkably, the screen was not cracked. I unlocked it. I had hundreds of notifications, texts from friends I hadn't seen in years, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I opened TikTok. I didn't even have to search. There it was, on the For You page. It was a duet video. On the left was Noah's original live stream footage, the shaking camera, Monica's screaming face, me falling. On the right was a popular commentary creator, a woman with blue hair who looked horrified. The caption read, "This rich kid in Denver live-streamed his parents beating his sister because she wouldn't buy him a BMW. I have no words. The internet, do your thing." I scrolled to the comments. "Someone find this girl and hug her. The way the dad just stood there. Monster. The brother is laughing. You can hear him laughing. That is psychopathic. I hope she sues them for everything they have. Justice for. The sister is trending." I watched the video again. I watched myself fall. I watched myself look up at the camera with pleading eyes. I used to hate that girl. I used to hate how weak she looked. I used to hate how she folded napkins and swept floors and wrote checks to buy affection that never came. But looking at her now, on the screen of my phone, I didn't hate her. I felt a fierce, burning pride. She had said no. She had stood under that tree, surrounded by enemies, and she had said no. I locked the phone and placed it on my chest. Mr. Hayes stood up. "I will file these immediately. Lena, you should rest. I will have a security guard posted outside your door tonight, just in case they make bail." "Thank you." "Arthur," I said. He left. The nurse dimmed the lights. The social worker promised to return in the morning. I was alone. I looked out the window. It was pitch black outside, but I could see the reflection of the city lights bouncing off the clouds. Noah thought he was exposing me. He thought he was shaming me. He thought he was showing the world a Karen sister who ruined Christmas. Instead, he had pulled back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz. He had shown the world the wires and the machinery and the ugliness. He wanted attention? Fine. I picked up my phone one last time. I opened the video again. I hit share. I typed a simple caption. "They told me I was nothing without them. Now everyone knows I was the only thing holding them up." I hit post. "Let it burn," I whispered to the empty room. "Let the whole perfect, shiny, expensive lie burn to the ground." I closed my eyes and, for the first time in 28 years, I slept without wondering what I had to do to earn my place in the morning. I had already earned it. I had paid for it in blood and pixels, and I was keeping the receipt. The fallout was not an explosion. It was a landslide. It started slow, just a few rocks tumbling down the hill in the form of local gossip, and then the whole mountain came down, burying the Carter family reputation under tons of digital debris. When I checked my phone the morning after the incident, the video Noah had live-streamed had migrated from Instagram to TikTok, and from there to Twitter, and finally, to the most dangerous place of all for people like my parents, the local Maple Ridge Community Facebook group. The comments were not the polite, passive-aggressive remarks my stepmother was used to. They were brutal. The internet does not care about your perfectly manicured lawn or your expensive Christmas lights. They saw a woman in a red silk dress assaulting her stepdaughter while the father stood by like a coward. They saw the perfect family for what it was, a grotesque performance. I have lived next to Monica for 6 years. One neighbor wrote, "She always acted like she was Mother Teresa, but I saw how she treated that girl. Finally, the truth is out." "Greg Carter is a realtor," another comment read, linking to his company profile. "I would never trust a man who watches his daughter get beaten and worries about his image. Disgusting." The consequences for my father were swift and corporate. 2 days after Christmas, while I was still navigating the paperwork for my new life, Greg received an email from the managing partners at his real estate firm. They did not fire him outright. That would invite a lawsuit. Instead, they placed him on indefinite administrative leave pending an internal investigation into conduct detrimental to the company brand. In the world of high-end real estate, where trust and reputation are the only currency that matters, that was a death sentence. His face was removed from the website. His listings were reassigned to junior agents. The clients he had spent years cultivating, the bankers, the developers, the old money families, stopped returning his calls. They did not want to be associated with the man from that viral video. He was radioactive. Monica's downfall was more social, but for her, that was worse than death. She had spent 10 years climbing the social ladder of Maple Ridge. She was the secretary of the Women's Charity League. She was the head of the HOA Beautification Committee. She lived for the moment she walked into a room and people looked at her with envy. Now they looked at her with disgust. The chairwoman of the Charity League sent a notification that Monica's position had been vacated due to unforeseen circumstances, and that her presence at the upcoming New Year's Gala would be a distraction. It was a polite, rich person way of saying, "You are trash, and you are not welcome here anymore." I heard from Mrs. Dalton that Monica tried to go to her usual yoga studio a few days later, acting as if nothing had happened. The owner asked her to leave because other members were uncomfortable. The woman who had weaponized exclusion against me for my entire life was now standing on the outside of the glass, banging on the door, realizing that no amount of money could buy her way back in. But the most complex poetic justice was reserved for Noah. My brother did not get beaten. No one laid a hand on him. In fact, he was technically the whistleblower. But the world is not stupid. People watched that video, and they saw the smirk. They heard the laugh. They read the caption. He became a meme, but not the kind he wanted to be. He was not the cool influencer. He became known as the iPhone kid, the symbol of a generation so detached from reality that they would live stream their own family's tragedy for clout. The backlash hit his real life like a hammer. The Colorado State High School Activities Association has strict codes of conduct regarding student athletes and digital behavior. While he was not the one throwing punches, his participation in cyberbullying and the exploitation of a domestic violence incident was grounds for an immediate review. He was suspended from the basketball team for the remainder of the season. The scouts from the universities, the ones Greg had bragged about, the ones who were supposedly going to hand Noah a full-ride scholarship, went silent. Athletic programs want talent, yes, but they hate liability. A player who films his family imploding and mocks the victim is a public relations nightmare waiting to happen. The letters of interest stopped coming. The phone calls stopped. Noah lost his crown. He walked into school after the break not as the golden boy, but as a pariah. The same friends who had laughed at his jokes were now distancing themselves. Afraid of being caught in the blast radius of his toxicity, he had wanted to be famous. He got his wish. He was famous in the worst possible way. While their world was burning down, I was quietly building mine. I moved into my studio apartment on January 2nd. It was in a converted warehouse district on the edge of downtown Denver. The rent was $1,200 a month. The walls were painted a color that was supposed to be cream, but looked more like old parchment. The radiator hissed and clanked all night like a dying animal. The view from the single window was of a brick alleyway and a fire escape. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. I remember the first night I spent there. I sat on the floor on a cheap mattress I had bought from a discount store. I had no furniture yet, just a suitcase of clothes and a box of books. I held the key in my hand. It was a simple brass key, cold and jagged. There was no shouting. There was no one demanding I fold napkins. There was no one telling me I was selfish. There was just silence, a heavy, beautiful, golden silence. I ordered a pizza. I ate it straight from the box, sitting cross-legged on the floor. It was the first meal I had eaten in years that didn't taste like obligation. I did not celebrate alone for long. I knew I was damaged. You don't walk out of a burning building without inhaling smoke. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma, a woman named Dr. Alvarez. Dr. Alvarez was small, sharp, and incredibly kind. In our first session, I spent 40 minutes trying to explain why I felt guilty for ruining my family's reputation. I did not ruin it, I corrected myself, but I feel like I did. Dr. Alvarez looked at me over her glasses. "Lena," she said, "let us give things their proper names. You have been living in a war zone." She taught me the vocabulary of my own life. She explained parentification, the process where a child is forced to take on the role of an adult, emotionally or practically, to support the parents. That was me, managing the household since I was 13. She explained financial abuse, the control of a person's ability to acquire, use, and maintain economic resources. That was Greg, taking my salary, guilt-tripping me into debt. She explained gaslighting, manipulating someone into questioning their own reality. That was Monica, telling me I was crazy or dramatic whenever I tried to set a boundary. Hearing these words was like turning on a light in a dark basement. The monsters were still there, but now I could see them. I could see that they were not my fault. I stripped the labels off myself one by one. I was not the ungrateful daughter. I was not the selfish sister. I was a survivor of a systemic extraction of my life force. I used the trust fund, my grandmother's shield, to reclaim my future. I enrolled in an advanced master's program for data science at the University of Colorado. I paid the tuition in full. Writing that check felt like an exorcism. Every dollar I spent on my education was a dollar they couldn't spend on a BMW. I also joined a support group. It met on Thursday nights in the basement of a community center. It was a circle of metal chairs filled with people who looked just like everyone else, nurses, teachers, mechanics, but who carried the same invisible scars I did. For the first 3 meetings, I did not speak. I just listened. I listened to a man talk about his mother who gambled away his college fund. I listened to a woman whose father threatened disownment every time she didn't do exactly what he wanted. In the 4th meeting, the topic was the breaking point. I raised my hand. My heart was pounding, just like it had in the ambulance. "My name is Lena," I said, and my breaking point was a BMW. I told them the story. I told them about the tree. I told them about the years of being the good girl. I told them about the slap, the live stream, and the silence of the room when I finally said no. When I finished, the room was quiet, but it was not the awkward silence of the Carter Christmas party. It was a reverent silence. An older woman across the circle, a retired teacher named Margaret, leaned forward. "Your brother," she said softly, "he tried to shame you. He tried to use that video to strip you of your dignity." I nodded, looking at my hands. Yes, he did. Margaret smiled. It was a fierce, knowing smile. "But he didn't, did he? He handed you the key. You took the very thing they used to humiliate you, their public image, their vanity, their obsession with appearances, and you used it to lock them out." She paused, looking me right in the eye. "That is not just survival. Lena, that is judo. You use their own weight to throw them. That is power." I walked home that night through the cold Denver streets. The snow was falling again, coating the dirty sidewalks in white. Margaret was right. For years, I thought my family's obsession with image was my prison. I thought their vanity was the wall I could never climb. But in the end, their vanity was their weakness. Noah was so obsessed with being seen that he didn't realize he was filming his own demise. Monica was so obsessed with control that she lost it on camera. Greg was so obsessed with status that he forgot to be a father. They had built a glass house. All I had to do was stop catching the stones they threw. I turned the corner onto my street. I saw the light in my window on the 3rd floor. It was a warm, yellow square in the darkness. It was small. It was humble. It was nothing compared to the mansion in Maple Ridge. But it was mine. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email notification from Mr. Hayes, my lawyer. The subject line read, "Final hearing scheduled." I stopped under a street lamp and read the preview. The court date was set for next month. It would be the final showdown, the permanent restraining order, the final severance of the financial ties. I put the phone back in my pocket. I was not afraid. I had the video, I had the truth, and for the first time in my life, I had a team. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Alvarez, the people in the basement circle, and the ghost of a grandmother who knew exactly who I needed to be. I walked up the stairs to my apartment. I unlocked the door. I turned on the light. I looked at the small, pathetic Charlie Brown Christmas tree I had bought for $5 and placed on my windowsill. It had one ornament on it, a simple silver star I had bought at a thrift store. I touched the star gently. "You are ready," I whispered to myself. The storm had passed. The ruins were smoking. But in the center of the devastation, I was still standing, and I was ready to bury the ashes. It was 3 months later when we finally met in court. The snow had long since melted from the streets of Denver, revealing the gray concrete underneath, but the air inside the municipal courthouse felt colder than any winter morning in Maple Ridge. I walked in with Arthur Hayes by my side. I was wearing a navy blue blazer I had bought with my own money, not the trust, and a pair of sensible heels. I did not look like the girl who used to scurry around the edges of parties holding trays of appetizers. I walked with my chin up, my hands steady, carrying a leather portfolio that contained the documentation of my entire life. When I saw them sitting on the bench outside the courtroom, I almost didn't recognize them. The Carter family looked like a deflated balloon. The shiny, taut surface of their perfection had wrinkled and sagged. Greg sat with his shoulders hunched, staring at the floor. His suit, usually impeccable, looked slightly too big for him, as if he had lost 20 pounds of ego in the last 90 days. Monica was wearing large sunglasses indoors, likely to hide the dark circles that no amount of concealer could cover. She wasn't wearing her signature red. She was in a muted beige, trying to look like a sympathetic victim. And then there was Noah. My brother sat apart from them, jamming his hands into the pockets of a gray hoodie that he had pulled low over his forehead. He was bouncing his leg nervously. He didn't look like the golden boy anymore. He didn't look like a basketball star. He looked like a terrified 16-year-old kid who had accidentally burned down his own house. When I walked past them, Noah looked up. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. He flinched. He looked away immediately, staring at his sneakers. He knew. He knew that the reason we were all here, the reason his parents were facing a judge, was sitting in the cloud storage of his own Instagram account. We entered the courtroom. It was a small, wood-paneled room that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. The judge was a stern woman with gray hair named Judge Patterson. She didn't look like someone who cared about how many Christmas lights you put on your house. She cared about the law. The hearing was for the permanent protection order and the final adjudication of the trust dispute. Greg's lawyer, a man who looked like he cost $200 an hour and knew he was losing, tried to start with a speech about family unity and misunderstandings. Judge Patterson cut him off. "I have reviewed the petition," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Let us go straight to the evidence. Mr. Hayes?" Arthur Hayes stood up. He didn't make a speech. He simply connected his laptop to the courtroom's display screen. "Your Honor," he said, "we would like to submit Exhibit A. This is the unedited footage of the incident on December 24th, recorded and broadcast by the respondent's son, Noah Carter." Hayes pressed play. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. Suddenly, the quiet courtroom was filled with the jarring, upbeat sound of Jingle Bell Rock playing from the video's audio. The contrast was nauseating. On the screen, the Christmas tree sparkled beautifully. The scene looked cozy, expensive, and perfect. And then, the violence started. We watched Monica lunge. We heard the sharp, sickening crack of her hand hitting my face. We heard the sound of the ornaments shattering. We watched Greg grab my shoulders and shake me. His face twisted in a snarl that looked demonic under the fairy lights. But the most damning part was the caption that Noah had typed, which hovered over the violence like a neon sign. POV, when your sister ruins Christmas and mom snaps. The courtroom was dead silent. The only sound was the video playing, Monica screaming, me crying out, and the festive music thumping in the background. Hayes paused the video on a freeze frame. It was the moment Greg was screaming into my face while Monica dragged me by the hair. He turned to my father. "Mr. Carter," Hayes asked, his voice deceptively mild. "In this frame, you are telling your daughter she is humiliating you. Can you explain to the court why you believed her refusal to liquidate her personal inheritance to buy a luxury vehicle for your son was a humiliation that justified physical assault? Greg stood up. He wiped sweat from his forehead. It wasn't about the car. He stammered. It was the disrespect. She was making a scene. I was just trying to calm her down. It was a misunderstanding. A father has a right to discipline his child when she is being hysterical. Judge Patterson leaned forward. Mr. Carter, she said, her voice like ice, your daughter is 28 years old. She is not a child. And looking at this video, the only person who appears hysterical is you. Greg's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His father knows best routine, which had worked on me for 2 decades, withered instantly under the gaze of the law. Hayes turned to Monica. And Mrs. Carter, you claimed in your deposition that Lena attacked you first. Monica stood up. She was trembling. She took off her sunglasses, revealing eyes that were red and swollen. She provoked me, Monica cried, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. She knew how important that night was. She knew we had guests. She did it on purpose to hurt Noah. She is jealous of him. She has always been jealous of him. Hayes pointed to the screen. Is that why you hit her? Because she wouldn't buy him a BMW? It is family money, Monica shrieked. It was meant for the family. It was a trust fund in her name, Hayes corrected calmly. And you assaulted her because she exercised her legal right to say no. The judge looked at Noah. Young man, she said. Noah stood up slowly. He looked small inside his hoodie. Why did you record this? The judge asked. Why did you not call 911? Noah looked at his parents. Then he looked at me. I thought it was funny, he whispered. Excuse me? The judge asked. I thought it was just drama, Noah said, his voice cracking. I thought it would get views. I didn't know. I didn't know Mom would hit her that hard. The admission hung in the air. I thought it would get views. It was the epitaph of our family. Monica put her head in her hands and began to sob. It wasn't a quiet cry. It was a loud, wailing performance of grief. Oh, look what you have done, Lena, she wailed, pointing a shaking finger at me across the aisle. You have destroyed this family. You have ruined your brother's future. Are you happy now? Just drop the order, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Don't do this to us. For a moment, the old reflex kicked in. The part of me that was trained to fix things, to smooth things over, to fetch the ice pack and apologize for bleeding, wanted to speak. I wanted to say, okay, I'm sorry, let's stop. But then I looked at the screen. I saw the image of myself on the floor. I saw the fear in my own eyes. I stood up. Your Honor, may I speak? I asked. Judge Patterson nodded. Go ahead, Ms. Carter. I turned to Monica. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke with the flat, hard certainty of a survivor. I didn't destroy this family. Monica, I said, this family was destroyed the moment you decided that my only purpose on this earth was to serve Noah. It was destroyed when you looked at a trust fund meant for my safety and saw a down payment for a car. It was destroyed when you taught your son that his sister's pain was content for his internet fame. I took a breath. You are not crying because you miss me. I said, you are crying because the ATM is closed, and it is never opening again. Monica gasped, her face crumbling. Greg stared at the table. Noah pulled his hood down further. Judge Patterson banged her gavel. I have heard enough, she said. The ruling was swift and total. The permanent protective order was granted for a duration of 5 years. Greg and Monica were barred from contacting me, coming within 500 feet of my residence or workplace, or attempting to communicate through third parties. The trust was fully severed from any family oversight. The judge ordered a forensic accounting of my father's finances to ensure no other assets of mine had been misappropriated. And then, she looked at Noah. Mr. Carter, she said, you are a minor, so you are not a party to the protective order in the same capacity. However, I am issuing a no-contact order, and I suggest you think very carefully about the fact that your desire for internet fame has just cost your parents their reputation and your sister her family. Court is adjourned. We walked out into the hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. It was over. Mr. Hayes squeezed my shoulder. Good job. Lena, I will handle the filing. You go home. I nodded. Thank you. Arthur. I turned to leave, but a voice stopped me. Lena. It was Noah. He was standing near the water fountain. Greg and Monica were arguing with their lawyer further down the hall, too distracted to notice him. He walked over to me. He didn't look like the cocky influencer anymore. He looked like a child who had woken up in a nightmare. I stopped. I didn't step closer. I just waited. I didn't think it would go this far. He stammered. He looked at his shoes, then at me. I shouldn't have posted it. I know that now. He paused, waiting for me to comfort him, waiting for me to say, It's okay. Noah, you're just a kid. But I didn't say it. I just wanted people to understand you. He lied. It was a weak, pathetic lie. Or, I don't know. I miss you. Lee, Mom is crazy right now. Dad is drinking all day. It sucks at the house. He looked at me with those puppy dog eyes that used to work. The eyes that got him the extra dessert, the new sneakers, the forgiveness. Can't you just talk to them? He asked. Maybe fix it? I looked at him. I looked at the brother I had loved more than myself for 16 years, and I realized that he didn't miss me. He missed the buffer. He missed the person who absorbed the toxicity so he didn't have to. No, Noah, I said softly. He blinked, surprised. You didn't live stream that beating to help me. I said, you did it to entertain strangers. You traded my dignity for likes. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. But in a way, I should thank you. I said, because you gave me the evidence I needed to get free. So, you got what you wanted, you got the views, and I got my life back. But we are family, he whispered. No, I said, we were a content house, and the show has been canceled. You are responsible for your choices, Noah, just like I am responsible for mine. I turned around. I didn't hug him. I didn't look back. I walked down the long marble hallway, the sound of my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the floor. I walked out the double doors and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the Denver afternoon. The air smelled like spring. It smelled like rain and wet earth and new beginnings. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with oxygen that finally felt like it belonged to me. That evening, I was back in my studio apartment. It wasn't much. The furniture was a mix of IKEA and thrift store finds. The rug was secondhand, but it was quiet. There was no shouting. There was no tension. There was no one demanding I perform. I walked over to the small table by the window. I had bought a small artificial tree. It wasn't a Christmas tree, really. It was just a small, potted pine I had found at a garden center. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small box. Inside was a single glass ornament. It was a cheap, blue sphere I had bought for 50 cents at a garage sale. It had a scratch on one side. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't expensive. I hung it on the branch. Then, I took a small plastic star. I stepped back and looked at it. For 28 years, decorating the tree had been a job. It had been a minefield where one wrong move meant a slap or an insult. It had been a performance for an audience that hated me. But tonight, in this quiet room, with the city lights twinkling outside my window, it was just a tree. I reached out and placed the star on the very top. It sat there, crooked and simple. I smiled. This year, no one hit me while I decorated the tree. No one forced me to give my life away to anyone. If you are an eldest daughter listening to this, you have the right to say no, and you have the right to walk out of the house that demands you burn yourself out just to keep their lights on. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from your car, your kitchen, or maybe your own quiet room? Please comment below and let's share our thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel Lila Revenge Stories. Like this video, and if you really enjoyed this journey, please hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, and see you in the next story.